Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wendigo Central. The Abstergo Man, also known as the Hat Man, Kulagiri Ardam, um, Nierlo Ehiges, different names for a Shadow Man. Well, they say it is a ghost or a fallen angel or a demon or even something from an alternate dimension. But here are 4 stories about Al-Abstergo, the Shadow Man, the Hat Man. Number 1. There's not many fears I have in life. In fact, I only have one. It started when I was 8. I was just playing outside, and then I noticed them, just standing there. For many years, I have no idea what exactly happened. And later, I find these stories about Al-Abstergo, about the Abstergo Man, and it fits. The irony of the situation is that so many people will tell me it's fake. People will tell me that it's sleep deprivation, that it's hallucinations, that it's sleep paralysis. The problem is, last I checked, sleep paralysis doesn't happen when you're not asleep. Sleep deprivation doesn't happen when you're not deprived of sleep, and, well, you get the gist. But here's the other thing. There are those days where you just feel like you're being watched, and I've had those days too. It is hard on so many levels, and I don't know what to do. But here comes the kicker. 3 days ago, I was just riding a horse outside, and I looked under a tree, and I saw him, and this no, it's in the middle of the day. It can't be like that. That's not supposed to happen. But it did. Number 2. The Shadow Man is not a ghost or a demon. It may not even be of this universe. But he comes into our world, our dimension, like a beam or a ray. What I'd find most notable is it seems best described as a plasma. And the Shadow Man can take on material power. Modern physics cannot explain this phenomena. He comes into our world, and he can take on material power. He can manipulate the 5th boson and acquire mass, and then let it all go, all at his own discretion. So you wonder why I bring this up. Well, a long time ago, I saw it when I was around 11. I know this thing likes to see people usually before the age of 13 or 14, but I never knew at the time what it was. Anyways, I saw it last night, and I don't know what this means, and to be fair, I don't want to know. It is pushing a area where I just don't feel safe anymore. I don't know about you, but I have to get out. Number 30. It came into my room, and I'm not sure if it's out. 1:34 a.m. I'm sat here writing this. I'm not sure if it's the last thing I'll ever write. Around 1:20 a.m., something snuck into my house. My dog was in the hallway, and the light turned on. I saw was the shadow sort of thing, but when it stepped into the light, it just disappeared. This creature picked up my dog and bit her head off. Sort of. It wasn't necessarily biting, but it was more biting it to the point where it just died. I don't know what this thing is, but whatever it is, it wants me to know that it's here. The lights go out and then I can see it. I tried calling the police, but they don't believe that a big shadow came into my house and killed my dog. So they laughed and the dispatcher hung up the phone. 1:40 a.m. If you're out there, please help me. I went to my sister's rooms and I tried to scream and now she's gone. I'm not going to go into details on what it looked like. I really don't want to talk about it. 2 a.m. It's been gone for 20 minutes. I think I'm safe now. I tried again, but I live in the middle of the woods, so it'll take a good 30 minutes. I hope I survive for that long. 2:05. I was so wrong. I'm never safe. I went to my parents' room. I heard every scream, every thud, as I heard the screams becoming weaker and weaker. I heard the steps coming from my parents' room, going down the stairs again. I closed my eyes this time. I don't want to see the bodies, or lack of for that matter. 2:38. The police arrived but wiped out the whole police team in one swipe. I heard all those screams of terror that stepped out of my house. I don't think I'm making it out of this. 2:42 a.m. I found what it is. It's something called the Al-Abstergo. I found an online forum that discusses this. It seems to be a fallen angel, a thing condemned by the gods, forced to wander the earth in search of a perfect person. It seems they literally got the short end of the stick, but I think I'm going to know what happens to those who don't meet that criteria. It's just stood out my door, waiting, watching, anticipating, patiently. Number 4. Featuring Asriel Werikai.
When my sister was 7 years old, she used to tell us how strange people climbed up the tree next to her window, and they'd come into her bedroom. They had big eyes and long mouths, and they would stand there, sway back and forth, and watch her. She would scream as loud as she could, and they would leave. I remember when she could barely sleep in her own bed, she'd creep into my room, unfold her sleeping bag on the floor, terrified. Now, she hasn't had any encounters with the so-called strange people that climb through her bedroom window. They become nothing more than a faint, a somewhat chilling, a bad dream to her. My parents brush it off as nothing but nightmares. I never knew what to think of it back then. I didn't want to think about it. What's happened to me now has caused me to recount those troubling memories of my little sister and the strangers that visited her. One night, I woke in a panic. I lay there in my bed, paralyzed, and my eyes widened. There was nothing forcing me down. I just chose not to move, out of fear. That night was a bit of a blur, but I remember that it was raining hard, and the wind was blowing unrelenting against the house. The weather station hadn't mentioned anything about a rainstorm that night, but then again, weather stations do tend to do nothing but make mistakes. The combination of rain and wind was astonishingly loud. I couldn't hear the ruffling of my sheets, my rapid breathing, or even my own heartbeat. I remember bolting upright and staring at my cat, who was sleeping at the end of my bed. He was wide awake, and he was looking at me with terrified, round eyes. He seemed to be meowing at me, but I couldn't hear him. It seemed like my room was filling with lights and then dimming back down to darkness, and vice versa, over and over again. It was disorienting and strange, and sometimes it seemed like my curtains were open and other times they were closed, but I wasn't sure. Soon I heard a noise rise above the deafening rainstorm. It was the only sound rivaling the wind and the rain. It was clear. It was audible. It sounded strange, a mix between the hoots of an owl and the cries of a loon. It throbbed and ebbed and began to get louder and louder until it swallowed up the sound of the storm. I vividly remember turning to look at the clock on my nightstand. I pushed the light on and the time read 4 o'clock a.m. I heard our garage door shudder, almost like it was shaken violently in an earthquake. My eyes stayed glued on the clock. I noticed that it was changing. The clock began to switch to all sorts of numbers before it began to switch rapidly into letters and then symbols I'd never seen before in my life. My cat was still meowing at me. Lights seemed to fill the room and disappear altogether, and the face of my clock turned to snowy static, the kind you get on a television set, just like when you see stars after you get your picture taken. Strange and unnerving symbols flashed before my eyes, and then nothing. I awoke the next morning, groggy. My curtains were closed. My cat was curled up at the end of my bed, sound asleep. When I looked out my window, it was sunny, and there were no leaves strewn about. The roads weren't damp, and no trees had fallen. When I told my story to my family, they just told me it must have been a very realistic dream. When I questioned them about the rainstorm, they were all confused. There had been no rainstorm that night, and my sister swore there wasn't because she's always easily awoken by storms. I decided it had been nothing more than a very strange dream. However, that very day, all our appliances and electronics didn't work. The cable was out for an hour. The internet was disconnected. Cell phones and iPods were shutting themselves on and off, even though they'd been fully charged for a while. Even the simplest things, like my mom's coffee machine or the microwave, they were all acting up. They all eventually worked, later in the evening or the next day, but it was very unnerving. Our house phone had staticky connections after that night for 2 months before they finally fried out and we had to buy new ones. I eventually felt compelled to ask my sister about the strange people that used to visit her when she was little. She refused to talk about them, and when I tried to pry her for information, she would flat out ignore me. After that night, I've never had another experience like that. I used to be a bit afraid of going to bed at night or even using my clock, but I pulled myself together and I got over it. But there has been something that has happened ever since then that does have me questioning a few things. My cat never used to do this. Our front door has 2 long windows on the side of it so you can look out on the porch. Every day, my cat will sit there and stare out the window at nothing, like he's waiting. That's silly. I know. I mean, why would he? Look, I don't believe we're alone in the universe, but could I have maybe, whatever happened that night is still in my memory. Vaguely. I'm reminded of it every now and then because of my cat's strange new habit. And even though I said that I've been able to lay down in bed and go to sleep just like I used to before the strange event that unfolded that night at 4 in the morning, I always stay awake just a little longer after midnight. Because the only thing I can tell myself or anyone else is don't trust the dark. And watch your windows.
Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed that new video of Wendigo Sentinel. I do want to say thank you for 8 subscribers. It seems to have slowed down recently, but it seems as though there is a somewhat loyal fan base. And yeah, so I'm gonna be doing another in 2 weeks. Viewer sent in stuff, so if you want to, just send it in to my email. And remember, if you see something